Welcome back to Talk of the Town on 99.7, 1450 WHTC and WHTC.com.
And we welcome you back to Talk of the Town for this Monday, April 27th. I'm Gary Stevens. We'll be open line following the 11 o'clock news block. But on this fourth Monday of the month, we devote our 10:30 segment to a chat with what is going on in Lansing with first-term Republican State Representative Brad Slagh is on the other side of our Zoom connection. Brad, good morning and welcome back.
Hey, Gary, good morning to you. Glad to be able to be a part of this morning. And though we're not together, we are together.
And it's something that you mentioned about the fact that last week when we had to do the phone conversation, it was a case of, yeah, it was nice, but you don't have the personal interaction. With Zoom, we got that.
It's better, definitely better. Thank you.
Again, and you can join the conversation, even though right now we are not asking you to join us in Zoom. You can do the old-fashioned way at 395-1450, 395-1450 to ask Brad about what's going on in Lansing. I have a funny feeling, Brad, that Thursday is going to be an interesting day when the legislature meets to see whether or not Governor Whitmer will get more of her emergency powers extended beyond April 30th. I have a funny feeling that the discussions might be somewhat lively.
I think you're exactly right. Although I think that it won't be just Thursday. It's already begun, and the process will continue through this week as we look for, are there ways that we can come together, the legislature and the governor, on extensions? And, I think what's really hard for most people is that they don't understand that there's a difference between the emergency declaration. That's one thing. We actually can have an emergency declaration without locking everybody down. And so there's a stay-at-home order, and that's entirely different than the emergency declaration. And so there's those two pieces, and they need to be worked on. But not everybody understands it that way, and that makes it difficult in a conversation with people about what's happening.
Do you get a sense, Brad, that right now the executive branch is sort of taking a Rway approach, in that it's not really including the legislative branch on this?
Yeah, the law that the governor is relying on, the emergency declaration stuff, gives full power to the executive, the governor. And the governor in this particular case has said, yep, that's exactly what I want, and it's how I'm intending to run this. It's my show, and I get a chance to do whatever I want to. Until there's a public swing of opinion, or a swing of the public opinion, maybe that's how it needs to be phrased, I perceive that the governor is going to continue in that vein.
Now, Brad, it seems as if, and maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but I've been mentioning it rather regularly about the disconnect between those who have been directly affected and those who have not been directly affected. Mm-hmm. And it's a case of, well, those who've been directly affected, we're trying to do stuff to save lives, while those not affected are saying, hey, you're doing stuff to affect people's livelihoods. I don't know whether or not there can be a compromise between these two positions right now.
That's a great point. You know what? I think there is a compromise that could be there. And it comes when people are willing to listen to the fact that both sides of them are actually being impacted by it. Some of them are being impacted livelihood. I think the words that you chose were really insightful. There's a livelihood and lives. And actually both of those things are joint. An example is today, I was on a phone call earlier this morning, a Zoom meeting, and in the Kalamazoo area, they have a suicide hotline. And that suicide hotline today, right now, is 33% higher calls than they were a year ago this time. So the ramp up of what's going on in people's lives, livelihoods and lives, are all together in this. And we need to understand that and I think that that's part of, the piece for me that I believe the governor is maybe not taking into account is what's the impact across the board rather than simply in the lives lost to what they're terming lives lost to COVID.
If you got a question for State Representative Brad Slagh, he'll take it at 395-1450, 395-1450. Concerns, and rightly so, about the impact that this situation has on the state budget, state finances. Certainly revenue is going to be down and expenditures are going to be up. All hands on deck in terms of diverting money for maybe roads or other things too, dealing with the COVID-19 situation. Let me ask you up front, in the efforts along those lines, there are those who say that maybe state lawmakers need to show an example or show leadership by maybe cutting their pay or withholding their own pay or dealing with staff cuts while we are all in this situation, to sort of show some solidarity with those who have lost their livelihoods or have lost their jobs because of this. What is going on in that regard? Are you involved with that, or is that still something that needs to be discussed at a later date?
So from my knowledge, I don't know that there's a discussion right now of changing the pay for legislators. Just because I'm not in Lansing doesn't mean I'm not still working every day. In fact, as I answer multitudinous, maybe even emails, phone calls related to the problems that people have trying to get unemployment and other kinds of things to try and make sure that we're helping our community live through this. I would contend that I probably am earning my money as well as I earn it any other time. Creating bills is not necessarily the place where legislators show their stuff. That's a place where you can make a name for yourself maybe, but it's not where you show your impetus. That's when people are down and they're needing help and they're reaching out to you. That's when you can really make a difference as a legislator. So that's exactly where I've been. Staffing, I think there is a purpose for us to cut government staffing, and we need to be looking at that and doing layoffs, at least temporary layoffs or whatever, until we get folks back, stuff going back up again across the board.
And the reason why that was brought up is the fact that the governor is saying she's cutting staff. The attorney general's cutting staff as well. So they're saying, hey, we're doing it. Why not the legislature? And there are others who are saying, hey, wait a minute, this is, the Democrats are doing this. Why isn't the Republican leadership in Lansing, in terms of the legislature, doing this? They're making a political, possibly a hot potato on this particular issue.
And I would consider it a hot potato and political. Both I think are good terms. I've got my staff heavily engaged in answering phone calls and doing stuff every single day. So I think there's a lot of folks who are reaching out to me who would really be upset if we didn't have people to be able to answer phone calls and take care of folks.
395-1450 is the number if you wish to be a part of our conversation on WHTC's Talk of the Town. We're chatting via Zoom connection with State Representative Brad Slagh from R-Zeeland Township. He represents much of Ottawa County in the legislature, one of three men that do represent Ottawa County in the State House, along with Jim Lilly of Park Township and Luke Meerman of Coopersville. Next Monday, we are scheduled to be chatting with Representatives Meerman and Lilly in that order here on WHTC's Talk of the Town. Obviously, the Senate on Friday made a resolution to try to change some of the laws involving the governor's emergency powers in the situation. And the Whitmer administration says if that legislation gets to her desk, it's going to be dead on arrival. Does some reform need to be done? And perhaps this reform is going to have to wait until the governor's mansion and the legislature are both in the same party's hands, because if we have split government, this probably is not going to pass.
There is a real likelihood that it will not pass all the way through. I think the interesting thing, though, Gary, is that no matter this, and I now sit on the inside, so I'm looking at this maybe a little differently than I would have before. But as I look at the laws that the emergency declaration are hung on, the 1945 law or the 1976 law, both of those pieces. The 1945 one was done under a time when the legislature was part-time, and it was difficult for them to travel to the state capitol from around the state. 1945, there would have not been the same kind of travel, the same kind of roads, highways, everything else that we have today. So it would have taken much longer to get from the western end of the UP down to the Capitol than it does today. So I think we have the ability for us to gather and the legislature together to be able to give insight, to give input that wasn't available before. So no matter who sits in the governor's chair, I think we ought to be looking to eliminate that 1945 law, which doesn't give a time frame for the legislature to speak into it. It seems wise for me that we don't have just somebody who is a single thought process ruler, somebody that believes that they know it all, answering no matter which party that could come from. In Lansing, I think we need to get rid of the 1945 law and use the 1976 law, either as it exists or with some changes. But that's just my perspective.
And that's what we're looking for. 395-1450, 395-1450. If you wish to have a conversation with State Representative Brad Slagh of R-Zeeland Township. With the relaxing of some of the regulations under Stay Home, Stay Safe in the most recent executive order issued by Governor Whitmer, some of the businesses that were directly impacted because they were not deemed essential, they were not deemed life preserving. Certainly, they get a little bit of a lifeline, but whether or not this was because of pressure by these groups, pressure maybe from people who are getting frustrated of this, or actual health concerns, we don't know. But at least it's a start there, Brad, on this.
Yeah, we moved at least a ways. We're excited that the governor at least opened up some stuff, some of the garden shops, greenhouses, some of those kinds of things. That there are some folks who this is the time that they make all of their money for the year. My understanding is the greenhouse industry as a whole here in Michigan, 70% of their total revenue comes in the month of May. So they were desperately concerned that they were going to go broke with the stuff that they've put in place since probably Christmas of last year, that they've been working on growing and getting ready to go out this spring. So I think they're still really concerned that they may not be able to survive, but at least they've got a chance, a fighting chance with some of that. The place that we're still really struggling is construction would be an example. A realtor, some of those kinds of things. I had a call from a lady in tears the other day saying, we're in a place. My son has got an allergy to something that's going on inside this. We've got a brand new house being built. We were supposed to be in at June 1. They're now saying maybe September if this thing gets lifted. How come we can't do construction when these people can be separated by distance? They can make things happen in ways that would be healthy and safe. And I think that's been our contention, Gary, that the governor continues to think about essential, non-essential. Our belief is that we can do it safe, unsafe. And if we can do something safe, then that's what we should be doing. We truly believe that the disease is a deadly thing. It's created life and death kinds of problems for folks, but it is not everybody. And what we're doing today is we're quarantining the healthy, where we've never in history done that. We've always quarantined the sick. So there's a thought process that we need to move away from quarantining our healthy folks and get into a place where if there's sick people, we need to get them off the streets and put them help them get better. But let's leave the healthy people out and let's get them moving the economy forward.
395-1450. Good morning. You're on the line with State Representative Brad Slagh.
Oh, good morning, Mr. Stevens. Good morning, Mr. Slagh. Thank you for your service for people in Ottawa County and our great state of Michigan. I'm concerned about marijuana. I think they should federalize Michigan. I wrote to William P. Barr, our Attorney General in Washington, D.C., about federalizing and closing down with pot shops and so forth. And I know a lot about marijuana and THC, all the active ingredients in it. And it might cause cancer, makes people stupid, and they drive drug now here in Ottawa County. And it's a big problem, and I think the governor should close down all those pot shops, especially here in West Michigan and Ann Arbor, Michigan. That's just my comment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for the call. 395-1450, Brad.
So, we're it's a business, right? The people of the state of Michigan said, yes, we want it. Yes, we should have it available. The people of the state spoke. I think we don't, even though I may not be in favor of having marijuana on the streets, and though I think that there's probably some real health risks that we haven't determined and hadn't seen yet, because the people spoke, I think we need to be listening, and that's there are choices. Elections have consequences.
395-1450. If you have a question for State Representative Brad Slagh, he'll take it on WHTC's Talk of the Town program. One more point I want to bring up before we do take our break, Brad, it is the fact that the legislature has to meet in person to be able to conduct business. Some are saying perhaps there needs to be some provisions for a situation such as we are in right now that maybe they don't need to meet in person. Are you of the opinion that have we gotten to the safe technology that we can meet separately, or is this still a case of you need the face-to-face contact?
I think there are probably ways today to be able to do, like we're doing right now, a Zoom conference where you had everybody's face. Everybody has to be able to be seen to be able to be considered part of it. The problem is that you miss the opportunity to have input from others in the same kind of way. When you walk into a crowd that are standing outside on the lawn and you have to walk through that crowd to be able to get into the building, it probably has a different impact than looking at a screen with what you can only see 20 people or something at a time. You're not seeing even 110 of the legislators, plus all the people that are in the gallery, plus the people that are on the streets. I think it's important that much of our business continues to be done in Lansing. That doesn't mean that there aren't ways to be able to do more of our committee meetings and some of those kinds of things in an electronic format.
Good morning. You're on the line with State Representative Brad Slagh.
Yes. Going along kind of with the last caller, how often is our wonderful governor drug tested? Because with some of the decisions that she's been making lately, she lets the marijuana shop be open as a necessity, and other things are not allowed to be open. Where does she come off making some of these stupid decisions? It just leaves some of us wondering if she hasn't been frequenting some of these marijuana shops.
Well, I don't know about that, Brad.
I definitely don't know that the governor is being drug tested on a regular basis. I'm pretty sure that she would not necessarily want to be drug tested on a regular basis, not because she's got anything to hide, just because it's one of those things that wasn't part of the requirements for holding the office. If random drug testing was part of it, maybe some other people would think they don't want to be part of the office. So I just don't know where that's at. But the question remains, is it a wise use of the powers of government to allow us things like marijuana shops to be open when you close everything else? And I think the answer is it's considered medicinal. That's supposedly the reason for why it's there.
Now, appreciate the call, 395-1450. According to our Scott Watson, who is a licensed clinical addictions counselor, most of us believe dispensaries are open for 3 reasons. THC in low and moderate doses does help with stress. For those with addiction, not just used to shut down supply, will potentially cause a cascade of other issues to health care, crime, and more. And states receive significant tax money from dispensary outlets. Good morning. You're on the line with State Representative Brad Slagh.
Yeah, hi. I think the previous question and then your answer after that was both just off the hook wrong. It could have been easy to say, I'm just sorry. That was really a bad way to answer it. But I don't think she needs to be drug tested. I don't think that was part of her job description. It's like you should say, we're going to work with the governor in a proper way to hopefully make some modifications for the next time. But it's like, well, that answer was totally. That reminds me of the John McCain answer when he shut down the person who was like convinced that Obama was a Muslim, and cut her off and said, "No, we don't do questions like that." So I would think you should learn from him with how to answer that.
I appreciate the call. Thank you. Good morning. You're on the line with State Representative Brad Slagh.
If I could, I'd like to make some comments and then ask a question.
Go ahead.
The comments I would like to make are that I believe the governor is working on behalf of special interest groups, so like labor unions, for example. I believe that if the issue of marijuana hadn't been an issue, I don't know for sure if we'd have Governor Whitmer in office. But here is my question. If she overrides something that you send to her for signature, if there's enough votes, can't you override that veto? How does that work?
Brad?
Yep. So the answer is yes. There is a way for the legislature to override a veto, but I believe it takes 3/4 of the sitting legislators to override that veto. I'm not sure about the exact number, but significantly more than what the Republicans have in office today in either of the houses. So it would take a overwhelming majority to be able to override a veto that the governor lays down.
Yeah, there's just not the votes there to be able to do that. Appreciate the call, 395-1450. Brad, we're going to button things up here. We will put a link to your webpage, your state government webpage, on our website at WHTC.com when we put the audio version of our conversation. And when we put the video version, we'll have it on our Facebook page, which is 99.7 and 1450 WHTC. We'll have that up a little bit later on this afternoon. Brad, we appreciate the time. Thank you very much for joining us today on Talk of the Town. Thanks for cooperating with us with the Zoom connection. Hopefully we can talk face-to-face next month. If not, hey, we can do it this way as well.
Good. Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it again.
Thank you very much. That is State Representative Brad Slagh on WHTC's Talk of the Town program. Up next, it's CBS News with Steve Catham, followed by WHTC News with Peck Nichols, some open line time, and then the WHTC Midday Report at the bottom of the hour on Real News Now, 99.7 and 1450 WHTC.